we're going to read Grace Hopper, Queen of Computer Code, written by Lori Walmark, illustrated by Katie Wu. Let's see what it's going to be about. Grace Hopper, Queen of Computer Code, and we learned coding is telling a machine what to do. Alright, Grace leaned back in her chair and yawned. Once again, she had worked far into the night writing computer code. Grace's latest computer program, one to guide Navy missiles, was almost complete. All that was left was to check her work. Grace reviewed the code line by line, making sure she hadn't made any mistakes. When she finished, Grace set down her pencil and frowned. The last section of her program, a bit of code that multiplied numbers, looked familiar. She checked back through her work and found she had written the same code before, over and over again. Grace snorted. What a colossal waste of time. There had to be a better way. Why not make the computer do the work? Computers were good at doing boring jobs. She figured out a way to store pieces of a program, like her multiplication code, inside the machine. When she needed to use the code in another program, all Grace had to do was tell the computer where to find it. The computer then joined together the many bits of code into one complete program. No one had ever done that before. Grace was the first. Even as a child, Grace loved to tinker with gadgets and learn new ideas. She wanted to understand how things worked so she could make them better. When Grace was 7, she unscrewed the back of her alarm clock and took a peek. She reached in and spring, out popped the spring, followed by several gears. One rolled under the floor and under her bed. So that's what we learned for engineering design, right? She's a scientist because she's always asking questions. Grace scooped up the parts and tried to put them back together. No matter which piece she put where, she couldn't get the clock to work anymore. She needed another clock she could study, one that still worked. Grace sprinted from room to room. Clock by clock, she fiddled with gears, springs, and levers, and pins. She arranged them this and that way. 7 clocks later, 7-year-old Grace understood what made clocks tick. When Grace's mother discovered the many jumbles of clock parts scattered around the house, all she could do was laugh. After all, Grace was just being Grace. That's good. She's a kind mother. Once Grace figured out how clocks worked, she moved on to bigger challenges. She followed a complicated blueprint and constructed a dollhouse made of stone. What? But there were no stairs. How could her dolls get up to the top floor? Not a problem for junior engineer Grace. She opened her toy construction kit and laid everything she needed: nuts, bolts, metal pieces, and electric motor. It took some experimentation, but Grace figured it out. Now her dolls had an elevator to go up the stairs. What? Grace delighted in learning difficult concepts, the harder the better. While her schoolmates wore flurry dresses and learned to be young ladies, Grace studied math and science. Her bedroom overflowed with books and scientific equipment. She raced through her high school classes and finished 2 years early. Grace couldn't wait to start college. More classes, more learning, more fun. On the day her college entrance exams arrived, Grace's hands trembled. She ripped open the envelope and proudly read aloud to her parents the many high marks in math and science. When she reached her grade for Latin, Grace fell silent. So Latin is another language. Just like in school we learn English and Spanish, so she's learning English and Latin. She had failed Latin. Without Latin, Grace couldn't go to college. Without college, Grace couldn't be a mathematician. And without math, Grace couldn't be Grace. Grace waved her schoolmates as they left for college without her. Nothing would stop her from joining them next year. She held her head high and returned to her studies. Working hard, Grace even conquered Latin. At the end of the year, she passed all her Latin tests. So she had to take one more year to study Latin before she could go to college. But she didn't give up. With her trunks packed and her math books in hand, Grace left for Vassar College, an all-women's school. Some of her classmates took classes called Husbands and Wives and Motherhood, but not Grace. Her favorite subjects were math and physics. And physics is a different type of math. Grace did more in college than just study. Whenever there was a fun or adventure to be found, she was always first in line. Her personal motto was dare and do. When a barnstormer came to town offering plane rides, Grace rushed to sign up. She pulled herself into the seat behind the pilot and adjusted her goggles. With a deafening roar, the propeller sputtered into action. The biplane rattled across the fields and lifted off. With each loop through the air, Grace's grin grew wider and brighter. Alright, this is gonna be the last page, and then we'll finish the book next time, okay? Because of Grace's hard work and intelligence, the other students respected her abilities. They often came to her for help with their studies. One day, fellow students entered the room, only to see a bathtub filled to the brim with water. Grace invited a volunteer to step into the tub, clothes and all. Water splashed over the edges and flooded the floor. The student burst into laughter. Grace explained the reason for this tidal wave. The volume of the student's body pushed out the same volume of water. The result? One soggy student wrapped in a towel, one math lesson never forgotten. So if you go into a tub full with water, the same water that comes out weighs the same amount as you. Pretty cool. Right, so we're going to stop there for now. And I want you to think, who wanted Basso? So who is Grace Hopper? What does she want? The first thing she wanted, it looks like she really wanted to figure things out. And one of the biggest things she wanted was go to college, right? But it didn't work out. There was a problem. What was the problem and how did it get solved? Okay? Thank you.